Sure. Well, I will say first, objective union is my term, so that's not like that's a classic term. But what I'm trying to identify is I'm trying to give a label to something that I think is very clearly there within the Lutheran tradition, and this is what Tuomo Mannerma refers to as this idea that Christ is a collective person,
Right.
Yeah.
and that that's a way for him to capture it. I just wanted a little more of a kind of a shorter way to say the same thing. So I called it the objective union, right? Something. The point is this: that any talk of union with Christ needs to start not just with the Ordo Salutis reality of the application of something to us, but of the Historia Salutis reality of what Christ has done. And so the idea there is that when the Son, the eternal Son, the Logos, takes upon himself a human nature, there is something ontological that is occurring for all of humanity. So humanity as a whole is now elevated in some way, so that the incarnation is not just about representation. It is that. I'm not saying it's not that. Right. I think there's something more going on there as well. That it's more than God just decreed that this one man would represent, say, the elect.
Right.
But that there's something real and ontological about the fact that now humanity itself is changed because God has assumed humanity in through his Son. So that when we're talking about the incarnation, then it's not just that the incarnation is, say, a kind of precursor to his death.
Right.
It was necessary as part of as leading up to his death. And I think scripture centers on the death of Christ. But it's not that the incarnation does not have saving power in and of itself. This is part of that compact whole of all of the events of Christ's life, death, resurrection. So we can't leave any of those out. So the incarnation, this is really just to say the incarnation is a very vital part of that.
Right.
And so there is something objective that occurs between Christ and all of humanity. So this is going to necessarily differentiate that approach that you certainly find in Luther. And I cite Chemnitz and Johann Gerhard, who I think are very clear on this as well. And they have a lot of patristic support for this, especially a lot of the Eastern Fathers. But even going back to people like Irenaeus, they use very similar language regarding the incarnation. But this is going to differentiate that from a really strictly particularist approach, from some in the Calvinistic tradition who are going to hold to a more particular atonement, which doesn't really quite fit with that idea. So there's going to be more of an emphasis on a kind of legal or federal representative connection between Christ and a particular group of people.
I think in a footnote in the books, and you've already said it here, but just for the itchy Reformed ears out there, you're not denying a federal dimension to this.
No, absolutely not.
But that's, you don't want to reduce it to a sort of to that federal union.